Hello, my people. Mi pueblo, mi pueblo. My people, mi pueblo. Hello, my people. This is your boy Adeleke. And I'm here creating this video. Just wanted to chat a little bit. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm really learning this whole system. Facebook, YouTube. Now, I just tried to do a YouTube live just a few minutes ago, and I realized that I can't do YouTube lives because I don't have enough subscribers. I have to have a minimum of 1,000 subscribers in order to do lives. And so my intention is to do regular lives. I want to build this channel up so that I can do regular lives. And those regular lives are going to I really want to focus the conversation to, like, I know as of late, my videos are kind of about whatever comes to my mind, literally. Like if I'm driving, because I spend a lot of my time driving, and something comes to mind, quite frequently I'll just make a video and then post it at a later time. And then also too, I'll have an idea when I'm working in the office. I'll pull away from what I'm working on at that moment in time, do a video, post it, and see where it goes. Really, most of the time, it's just what's on my mind. It's a video blog, It's how I've been approaching YouTube up until this point. But really, I want to grow it a little bit and grow more into a conversation with an audience, with my people. And I want to talk more and more about these ideas that mean a lot to me, and they mean so much to me that I just want to keep talking about them. And it really has to do with the idea. There's a scripture that I used to remember hearing all the time when I was a kid: the meek shall inherit the earth. And that scripture, like that, and some other concepts from scripture have always resonated with me and meant more to me than I believe those who was reading it to me or referred me to those scriptures ever intended for it to mean. And I'm gonna share this with you guys. So I recently found out. So, all right, growing up, I grew up in a religious space. My family tradition is a very, very closed group of Christian, ideology. Jehovah's Witness, if you've ever heard of it. I grew up in that space. And on my mother's side, all of my immediate family had converted to Jehovah's Witness, right? My mother's mother and her mother both became Jehovah's Witnesses about the same time, right? And so on my mother's side of the family, aunts and uncles, grandmothers, great-grandmothers, majority of the people on my mother's side of the family shared a faith system. And even those that didn't, I had an access to them. And so I knew, even though my mother's family is relatively small, I knew mostly everybody, and even some extended family didn't have super integrative relationships with them, but I knew a lot of them. At least I had some experience with them and of them. And I had an aunt, my Aunt Lily. And Aunt Lily, her people came in to Texas. That's where I grew up, from Tennessee. And the story that I always got was that Aunt Lily's people had land in Tennessee, and they was driven off their land by white folk long time ago, like maybe in the 20s, because my great grandfather was born in the 20s, so maybe in the 20s or a little bit before that, they ended up in Texas from Tennessee, being driven off of the land that they had. And so my Aunt Lily, she worked. I always remember her. She always had a white apron on. She worked in a deli, a little cafe. She cooked there. And every time I came to visit her you know, she always had that white apron on. It's like that's how I see, like, even when I close my eyes and I think of her, I see her in that white apron because I was so used to seeing her in that white apron. She always was working. But here's the thing. She owned the house she lived in, and it was always her intention that the house that she owned, the house that she lived in, would be available to her family, those that came behind her. Now, she had no children of her own. She only had her brother's children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, which was my great-grandfather. And when she passed, what she didn't have is a will or any set of instructions. That property did go to my grandfather, my great-grandfather, I should say, and they made their decisions with the property as they saw fit, which was completely within their right to do. But it was always shared with me, particularly by my mom and my uncle, her youngest brother, that it was her intention that be something, right? And so that meant something to my mom, and the idea of it meant something to me as well. And that's since I was a small person. My father's family are all from Louisiana. My father's fathers. Now, growing up, I knew that my father's father had like 11 brothers and sisters. I think it was 12 of them in total. And my grandfather being one of the youngest, if not the youngest of all of the 11. I'm not sure if he was the absolute youngest, but definitely one of the younger of the 11. My father had more of a relationship with his first cousins and the like. I had somewhat of a relationship with some of my second cousins, some of my father's first cousins' children, who were my age mates. But for the most part, out of all of those 11 brothers and sisters, the children of those 11 brothers and sisters, I didn't have a real formidable relationship. I didn't really know a lot about many of those people, many of my people, out of the Baton Rouge area, Louisiana. I know where they are. I know how to find them. If I drove to Baton Rouge, I could, if I spent time in Baton Rouge, ask a few questions, a couple of spaces that I know of, I could find them. And then if I found them, they would definitely recognize me. And many of them I probably would recognize as well, because they look so much all alike. Like my grandfather and his 11 sisters. I mean, they all look, clearly related, right? So it's a better chance that I may recognize some of them, but I look so much like my father, they probably say, hey, you Wayne boy? So they would probably recognize me as well, which is awesome. And I've been to Louisiana a few times since my childhood. In my childhood, I'd only gone a few times. But since my childhood as well, I've been back a few times. I've had an opportunity to kind of meet some of my people and just get to know them a little bit more. I learned that my grandfather's father, or my grandfather and his siblings, they own this whole community. Like, you pull into the community, there's a church, and then all the houses that are in that immediate area, almost every last one of them either are currently a resident that is, that I'm related to, or the house is owned by someone that I'm related to and is being rented out, or it's empty and it's owned by someone that I'm related to. Either way it goes, significant portion of this neighborhood is my people. Phenomenal notion, and that the church was built by my people as well. Like, not in a distant way, like my grandfather's father had something very fundamental to do with the building of that church. Phenomenal. But because I would say partly because of the fact that, my dad grew up mostly in Texas. Even though he was born in Louisiana, he grew up mostly in Texas. I grew up entirely in Texas. I didn't have a day-to-day relationship with him, so I hadn't had a chance to really get to know my people there. Likewise, my father's mother people are also from Louisiana, and they're from a more rural part of Louisiana. Part of Louisiana they're from is real country. Next door neighbor is 3 miles down. Sugar cane fields, large fields where crawfish are farmed, that kind of thing. Rice fields. This is where my people, my father's mother's people are from. Although my father's father, someone I knew very little about. He died when my father was young, and by coincidence, by divine intervention, by this amazing circumstance of events, I began to learn about my great-grandfather, my father's mother's father, someone that I never knew much about. I'd only heard his name really in the last few years of my life. I had never heard his name mentioned before. I didn't even think to ask my grandmother about her people because she didn't talk. And I learned why. Whereas with my father's people, we all we know who they are, but there was this separation from them, partly because of the concerns, issues, cultural shifts that had to do with my grandfather converting to Jehovah's Witness. Partly because of that, but not in its entirety. But the other part of it was that the relationship that my grandmother had with her siblings and her mother, and the fact that her father passed so long ago in relationship to my own life. Like, again, her father passed when my father was only about 6 years old. This I all learned recently. And what I learned, the most fabulous part about what I learned, was that my great-grandfather owned substantial amounts of land. And his intention, right, was that land stayed with his children over time. He had the mind of Psalms 13:22. Did I say that right? 13:22? I hope I said that right. That it's the righteous man that creates a legacy, creates wealth for his grandchildren's grandchildren, and the unrighteous man who leaves his legacy for whomever, for the taking, so to speak. Now that's me paraphrasing the scripture, of course, not quoting it. And so the series of events that led to me learning about this was the fact that my own grandfather, at some point in the recent past, created a trust. And this was before my grandmother had passed. My grandmother passed recently, right before the pandemic started in 2019, early part of 2019. My grandmother passed, Ibaye grandma. We called her Grammy. My Grammy passed, but before she passed, for the first time, right before my uncle passed, which was just a few months before she passed, less than a half a year before she passed, my middle uncle passed away. Her middle son, she had 4 children. Her middle son passed, and when he passed, I was asked to help his common law wife with a real estate problem. Now, my family knows that I have real estate licenses. They know that I've studied this They know that I have some understanding of insurance, and I can navigate. Well, at least they believe that I may be able to help understand some of this, what they had going on. So I was asked to kind of help untie some of this stuff, because all of my grandfather has all this residential property, some commercial property, and it was all tied up because the trust wasn't done correctly. And I was asked to help untie that. But while I was untying that, I was asked at my uncle's funeral to help untie that. But while I was untying that, this issue came up with my auntie, I guess my uncle's common law wife, and the property that they were buying together. Now, it was really a property that my uncle was buying for his common law wife, or his wife. He had his own house that he lived in, and he was buying this house for her. They had a child together, for his son. And he was really buying this house for her. He was buying this house from her own family member, but he was buying it for her. So he went in the contract, and he satisfied the contract right before he died. Unfortunately, his common law wife didn't keep very good. She didn't keep records at all. They were all his records. And when he died, her sister made the attempt to take the property from her, evict her from the property, and take the property from her. So my aunt, my grandmother's daughter, my own aunt, asked me to come and look at this for her common law sister-in-law, right? My uncle's wife. To come look at it, because we don't want her to be out on the street. So I did, and I was able to figure out, well, one, he satisfied this agreement by the dollar amount, like based on the contract and your receipts. There ain't nothing else to talk about. This is satisfied. Now, it's not gonna, it won't equate a deed, but it does satisfy any contract that was there. An eviction is going to be hard to argue. Let's go. So I submitted some documents to the court, and I gave my aunt some very explicit instructions. When you go to court for this process. Let her attempt to evict you. Show up at court. This document is going to be filed in advance. You're going to file it in the court prior to your arrival. All of the facts of this point will be already filed. And so when you show up at court, what will happen is that the court will automatically pull anything irrelevant to this address, all documents relevant. It will pull it just because that's what they do. And when you show up at court, the judge is going to ask you to identify yourself, and you just shake your head. Yeah, that's me. And then if the court asks you about anything else, just don't say anything. Don't really say much of anything. And so she says, okay. She says it's going to be easy for me to do because I don't know what to say. I'm like, don't worry about it, Auntie. Just go in. I have all the confidence that this will work. This will work in this way. So she went to court. The judge asked her. Now, I wasn't present, but my father was there. My uncle, my grandfather, and my father were both present. My father was outside the courtroom. My grandfather was beside her as moral support. Court asked her to identify herself. Is this you? She's like, yep. And they asked, who is this with you? And she answered, this is my witness, my husband's father. She still refers to my uncle as her husband, which is perfectly okay for the context. And so the judge was like, okay, that's reasonable. You got one witness. Then he asked the defendant, the plaintiff, identify herself. She said, this is me. Says, okay, this is your complaint. How do you answer this affidavit of fact. How do you respond to this? Okay. She says, so let me see. And she sees the tally. She says, well, I don't have an answer for that. And the judge responded to her, well, if you don't have an answer for that, then we are done for the day. Good day. Case is dismissed. My aunt was so happy. Everybody, that my whole family was just so happy. They was like, whoa, this dude actually was able to help. And it didn't really cost us but $25 to file a document with the court. Phenomenal. Now, I'm not an attorney, but I do understand real estate. I understand the estate process. And I've always had the desire to hold a license as an attorney. But I figured I can have as much fun as I can getting to the meat of it. Like, you know, I could have gone to law school, but it was troubling for me. It was like difficult for me to like get my stuff together and keep my grades up in school. But it was much more fun for me to go and get licenses and learn and get into business and make some money and learn the process. It's more fun to learn by doing. So I got licensing. I got licensed in real estate. I got licensed in insurance. I got certified and whatnot in tax preparation, and that gave me a broad understanding and a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun. I've had a lot of fun in the process of learning, and so I'm gonna come back to that. The whole idea of having fun in the process of learning. What was it that Abraham Hicks said? Having fun in the allowing of what it is your desire is. My desire is to build this ancestral economic ecosystem, right? And it's really bigger than anything that I can imagine. What I have in my, it's bigger than what I have immediate imagination for. Really, I have to use my imagination and take aspects of my imagination, another aspect, and build aspects of my imagination together in this imaginary Lego system. And just the process of constructing that is fun for me. And then the process of learning how to get little bits of information closer to it, that's fun for me. And so that has been my thing, is to the challenge of learning is fun for me, and being reminding myself that I'm having fun just by learning. Whereas the expectation of everybody around me is that I make money and that I represent success in their eyes. But in my eyes, the success is the learning. That's the fun. That's the success, is being present and learning. And so I'm having fun, and I have to remind myself, and I thank goodness that this process, that I'm being reminded of myself that, yeah, man, this is fun for me. This is fun for me. So I was asked to untie that, and I was asked to untie this trust. Well, in the process, we untied the issues with the trust and the deeds for my grandfather's property. And all that was set in a direction, right? However, my aunt's need to see money coming in began to stress me in the process of me attempting to enjoy myself assisting her. And I started to assume her stress, and it became a significant distraction, the stress. And in that distraction, you know, we made some choices that really kind of drew more of the feeling that money was going to be short for my aunt, really, and even then for me as well. And you're talking about a load. And so through this whole process, I'm not going to go through all the details of it because that's not the point of this video, right? But through the process of all of that, my father took notice by my conversation with him that I had more, I had some leverage that I had no intention on using, but he insisted. And I followed my father's request, and I leveraged what, I had as it relates to some of these other property, some commercial property in particular. And through that, what I learned was there was a lot of manipulation going on within the assets that belonged to my grandfather. I wouldn't have believed it if you told me. And even now, I still have a little difficulty believing, and not that I having difficulty believing because I can see what's going on more clear, but I'm still kind of shocked that, I'm just shocked that my aunt would in one hand ask me to help someone out of a situation that they themselves would create, and so because of the tension that is within my family, right? Within my grandfather's living children. He only has 2 living children at this point. My father and his youngest sister, my aunt. Because of the tension between them, it has opened my father up to let me know more about his mother's experience with family assets and family property. And also an experience that he's having more recently with a friend of his, where he was being asked to be executor over family assets and family property. And because of that, my dad opens up and he tells me about his own grandfather. And through this, I learned that my father's grandfather, my great grandfather, my grandmother's father, my father's mother's father, who died in the 60s. And he had several children. But when he died intestate. Meaning that when he died with no will, with no instructions for the court to avoid probate court. He died intestate. That's the language that the courts use. He died intestate. And in that, the rules in Texas go that the property is going to be split between his children and any wife. And so there was a legal battle that lasted almost 20 years. And when my grandmother finally decided to pull away from that legal battle, she learned that the tax bill, her 1/9 of the tax bill, was over $180,000. 20 years worth between the 60s and the early 80s, late 60s, early 60s and 80s. During this whole period, the taxes were unpaid. The taxes accumulated and they were divided into 9 pieces. And my grandmother's portion of that was $180,000. $180,000 is a 1/9 of nearly $2 million in taxes. Who was this man? And why do I not know anything about him? And moreover, what? A black man in Texas dies in the 60s and has assets that's taxable up to $2 million? Whoa. Whoa. And whoa. And it took, and at first I was like to my dad, oh my God, I can't believe I got myself involved in all of this family drama, blah, blah, blah. And I was feeling a way about it. But then I just decided, no, you know what? I'm not going to feel a way about it, because this is how I'm learning about my family. I'm learning about the tribulation of family assets, and the confusion and the separation and the disjointing of family because of, in part, greed, but in part just a lack of family planning, financial planning, generational wealth planning. My great grandfather did obviously a phenomenal job of accumulating assets. But what he either didn't know or didn't have the proper information or the proper strategy to employ was a means of maintaining those assets are available through the generations. And that theme has come up in my family over again on both sides. And even without me knowing it, I have been driven, I believe, spiritually driven to make sure that, one, this is resolved here with me. Ironically, my children's mother has dealt with that in their own families. My oldest son's mother, and the remainder of my their mother, have all dealt with some version of this in their own families. And so, whereas it's been in one case, it's been multiple properties, multiple family-owned properties that were lost due to confusion and no one knowing how to accept responsibility, and I'm not going to pay the taxes just so they can live in it, and or in the case of our overseas family, a similar type of thing, I should be responsible for it. No, you shouldn't be responsible for it. No, and those things happen. They happen to the best of us. And the reason why is because a big part of the reason why it happens is that a lot of times everyone who's arguing or fighting or tussling or playing this tug of war with the assets, they're not always doing it off of greed. Not always. Sometimes that's the case. Frequently that's the case. But it's not always the case. Sometimes, a lot of times, it's the case that one believes that they can do it better than the other, right? Like, I should be taking care of this because I'll do it better than you, sibling or cousin or whatever the case is, and that happens too. Or I believe, or I've made these contributions and your contributions don't amount to my contributions, so I'll take care of it because I do a better job of it than you do. That's a common theme. And it really, it's not greed, it's something else. And sometimes it's the passion to want to hold on or preserve the memory of the ancestors that created the wealth in the first place. But ironically though, that passion to preserve works doesn't always work in tandem with the system to take it away from you. Like, the system is designed really for you to not hold on to it. And unless you have a mechanism that works within the system to maintain it, you risk losing it, even when your intention is to not lose it. It happens. It happens again and again. I met a lady a couple of years ago. I was on my way to Texas to do some of what I've been talking about. Right. I was on one of my trips to Texas to look into my grandfather and my uncle's assets in Texas. And I met a sister at the gate waiting to board, who's also going to Texas for a similar reason. And what I learned from her is that her grandfather had recently passed. And when her grandfather, she tells me that the day prior to her grandfather's transcending, he had 30 trucks under dispatch. 30 trucks that he owned or had leases on. They were all under dispatch. He owned a trucking company, and she had worked in her grandfather's trucking company all through college. She was an accountant. She had worked in her grandfather's trucking company all in her youth, and all through college. She did her summers and everything at her grandfather's trucking company. She was well aware on the types of revenue that her grandfather's trucking company was doing. $3 million a year easy. 30 trucks in dispatch at the time of his death. And within a matter of days of his death, they could only account for 4 of the trucks. They could only account for 4 of the trucks. The other 26 virtually disappeared. Now, in order to fully understand how that could even happen, you have to understand some of the rules associated with trucking, right? And, you know, as a truck driver in the truck, and I just learned that the boss just died, it's a good chance that I'm not getting paid. And there are rules out there that allow me to stay in the truck and put the truck under dispatch with another company, whatever I need to do to maintain my cash flow. It almost sounds like piracy, and in a way, it kind of works similar to the way the maritime laws work. It's a whole conversation in itself. But the point of me bringing that up is that this is what happened. This is what happened in that case, and it happens. And it's not always a function of maliciousness, greed, or some other negative thing. It could, and sometimes it is a function of ego. But even when it is a function of ego, a lot of times that ego is attached with a strong desire and love for the person who left the asset, saying that I'm going to do the best with it than anybody else, so I'm going to be the one to keep it moving. And those things happen, and the way to circumvent all of that is by having adequate planning for the rules of your the rules of your legacy set in place before your legacy, before you are legacy, right? So having the rules of what's to happen with your assets set up before you have no say, before you're either incapacitated or before your personal demise, before you transcend. Rather, whether that transcendence happens naturally over time or spontaneously one morning, or and that incapacitation could be anything from losing your ability to move and speak on your own, or your ability to think on your own, or anything from Alzheimer's to the inevitability, which is death and our own transcendence. That the way to do it is to have trusts set up trusts, corporations, LLCs, life insurance. You know, these instruments are the building blocks of maintaining legacy over time in our modern world. These are the modern tools. Now, there have been tools in the past. And in our past, it was just a matter of word of mouth. You show up and you say, "Hey, I'm the son of, my name is, Bobby bin Bobby. I'm Bobby, son of Bobby." And they're like, "Oh, wow, we haven't seen you since you was a small person, Bobby." Well, yeah, we've been keeping the land for you, waiting for you to show up. All these 1,700 acres and 4,800 heads of cattle are all yours. What do we do next, Bobby, son of Bobby? Those days are gone. Squatters' rights and taxes and government and just the whole land grab mentality that has come with the West. Those days of passing land by birthright alone are really behind us. They're kind of behind us, and they're not behind us in the sense that we will never see them again. However, in this modern time, this modern day, we need instruments and mechanisms and tools, modern tools, just like the day of sending a homing pigeon to get a message to your friend is gone, just like the day of using a Morse code to send a telegram to a friend, to send a message across the sea by Morse code. Just like those days are virtually gone. I mean, they're not entirely gone. There's still homing pigeons and Morse codes being used somewhere for some reason, right? But that's not how we do it. If I want to send a message to Ghana right now, I pick up my phone and I call Ghana. I send a text message to Ghana. The tools for messaging has changed. They're not the same. We don't necessarily do smoke signals to let somebody know that we'll be over by their house for dinner at 4:00. We don't do that anymore. I'm not saying we don't do it at all. I'm sure that there's occasions where smoke signals will be appropriate and even fun. But for the most part, we send a text. We make a call. And we don't even make a call from a landline phone anymore. We make a call from our pockets, right? So the tools are different. The intention is the same, but the tools are different. And the modern tools for communication are our cell phones, our smartphones, right? Our laptops, our tablets. Those are the modern tools. Internet connectivity, these are the modern tools. Likewise, the modern tools to pass assets down from generation to generation are corporations, trusts, LLCs, insurance contracts. Those are the tools that we use. Deeds, contracts, titles, transfer titles, trusts. These are the things that we use. These are the instruments that we use to hold our economic legacies together, which is a vital part. They're a vital part of our family being over time. So if we continue to ignore them, it's like ignoring our individual health. Nice car. A few generations ago, we didn't go for prostate exams. Now, if you're 40 years old and you're a man, you probably need to go check that thing out. Because our foods, our lifestyles, our culture is so different that the probability of a prostate problem has gone up significantly in just a few generations. So if we ignore the tools that promote our physical health, we almost ensure to have problems within our physical health. Same thing goes if we ignore the tools that help promote our generational economic health. then we can almost guarantee there'll be problems with our generational economic health. And listen, why worry about it? Like my great grandpa used to say, "Oh yeah, I can argue it over when I'm gone, or I'm gonna spend my money while I'm alive." He used to say this kind of stuff, and he meant it, because when he passed, he had nothing in place to ensure the passing of his property, and a little bit of that happened with his property as well. Now, fortunately, I was able to get involved before it got too hairy, and I've locked it up for my uncle and for my family behind him. And so it's, again, another property that we haven't lost to the system or to the confusion of distant family members being able to argue over the property. Now, doesn't mean they won't try. Doesn't mean that they haven't tried. But I'm also meaning to say that we've had some success in securing the assets over time. And so this is fun for me, actually. It's actually fun for me. And I just realized recently that, as I'm building up this YouTube channel, and I'm hoping everybody who is listening to this, that you subscribe and all that good stuff. Like, subscribe. I think I'm gonna make a video just asking you to like and subscribe my videos, because once I get up to 1,000 subscribers, that's my immediate goal, is to get to 1,000 subscribers so I can do Facebook lives. And then once the lives open up, then I'll set new goals from there. But right now, my goal is to be able to do lives. I need 1,000 subscribers for that. So if you're listening and you're taking advantage of what I'm saying, and you like what I'm saying, if it resonates with you, hey man, show me some love, like, subscribe, help me beat the algorithm so that I can do more of these and get to a better and bigger and more fuller audience. But yeah, that's what it is, man. I'm gonna have fun using this technology to talk to you about what's fun for me, and that is securing the bag for my great grandbabies, my grandchildren's grandchildren. I ain't even seen their faces yet. But I'm trying to secure that bag for my grandbabies, right? And I want you, every last one of you that's listening to this video now and in the future, to do the same. Secure that bag for your grandbabies. And look, these are the tools on how to do it. Just keep checking in with me. Look into trusts, look into corporations, look into life insurance, individual, what they call IULs, Index Universal Life insurance policies, or the business. Index Universal Life insurance policies will allow you to create an own banking system within your family, internal family banking system. And you can set it up to where you can set up the rules of a trust that requires any trustee to have a UIL so that you keep it going over time. Then when this trustee passed, then this trustee has a policy, then that trustee has a policy, and you can set these things up to where you have at a minimum 100 years of economic structure that you can set up within your life, at least 100 years. But if you do it right, you can set it up to where it's even longer than that, right? Using corporations, you can set it where it's in virtual perpetuity, like Ford Corporation, Carnegie. What's another big name? These were individuals that started a legacy for their families that are in existence 200 years in arrears in some cases, and more in others. Carnegie, Ford, why am I stuck? Some of the names. What's that one name? Rothschild, Rockefeller, all of these names, these are families that have almost have created a kind of an aristocracy within the context of this free market capital environment, so to speak. They're not kings, you know what I'm saying? They're not royalty, right? But a Hilton, they're not kings, they're not royalty, but their names carry significant weight. I'm gonna tell you another name that's on this way right now for that. Carter. Yeah, Smith, but Carter. Dr. Dre, Jay-Z, and Beyonce. They are bringing all the elements because they are creatives, and they're very successful creatives who are also very successful entrepreneurs, and they are very intentional family planners. That's the trifecta. That's the trifecta. That's the trifecta. Like, had Michael Jackson had a Beyonce to balance his thing out, buddy, it would be, Michael Jackson was on the road for it. He had a lot of those elements in place, but because he was on an island by himself, created some things for him. Bobby Brown and Whitney Houston, that they could have maintained their work together, you know. But then we have so many of our superstars that have gone and done some tremendous work and left amazing legacies, and haven't secured those legacies for their grandchildren's grandchildren. Like, we'll be talking about Aretha Franklin forever. Like, that, I can't imagine a time in the future where Aretha Franklin will not be known. My children know Aretha Franklin. They know who she is. They recognize her voice when she comes on the radio. When her music plays, they recognize her voices. And then sometimes if it's a song they had never heard before, they say to me, "Dad, is that Aretha Franklin?" Like, yep, that's Aretha Franklin. And I say that to say is that Aretha Franklin's music, her contribution to the world is solid. It's solid. It's solid. It's solid. What is not nearly as solid, however, is her economic legacy for her family. Not to say it's not solid, it's just not as solid as her musical legacy is for us all. But those Carters, we won't have that conversation about the Carters in 100 years. 100 years from now, the Carters' economic legacy, their familial legacy, will be as tight as it is. It's as tight probably as some of these other names, as tight as some of these other names, like, what, name one, as tight. Then their family name will be as tight as Heinz, Hilton, be as tight as Johnson and Johnson, be as tight as Kennedy, be as tight as Rockefeller, Rothschild, Ford, Carter. That's a space. I would love to see my family's name in a list of names like that that's just endured over time. I would love to see your family's name in a list of names like that that have endured over time. And your legacy, my legacy, our legacies individually may not have as significant of an impact as Carnegie or Hilton, Heinz or Carter, and still have a significant impact. May not has a significant impact on the global scale, but within the context of our individual families, can have just as a significant of an impact. And that's what the family planning paradigm is all about. So, hey, family land, family business. That's all that matters. Family land, family business. That's all that matters. And that's what we're working on. Working to build that for me, for my family, for you, for your family, for a family of families. That's the vision. And anyone that's willing to take the ride, please buckle up, because it's gonna be fun. I need it to be fun, because it will be fun. And with it being fun, that's where all the success is in. The success is going to be in the fun of building this legacy. not in the acquisition of legacy itself, because I'll never see my the likelihood of me seeing my grandchildren's grandchildren eat from the work that I do today, slim to none. But the fun in building so that my grandchildren's grandchildren can see and eat off of what I built today, oh man, that's what I'm talking about. So, hey, I love you. I love you all. I thank you so much. What they say, Wakanda forever. Yeah, but it's in my case, it's Sankofa forever. Sankofa is a big part of what we're doing, and so Sankofa forever, right? So I love you. I thank you. You listen to my spiel all the way through. Like, subscribe, share this with somebody that you know and love. Let's work together about some estate planning. If you have any questions at all, link up with your boy. I am not licensed in all the spaces relevant to what I'm talking to you about today, but I do have a pretty strong understanding and familiarity in most of it, and I do have contacts and references to be made in the spaces where I can't directly do the work. I can always refer you or help you refer or even help you understand the questions that you need to ask when you talk to that licensed person, so that you make sure that they know that you have enough perspective to where they have to be accountable to your vision, and I can help you get that vision out. That's what I want to do. That's what I love to do. For me, for you, let's do it. Oh man, this is what's up. Blessings.